The next panel discussion will be on corporates supporting startups, and we'll dive deep into the growing need for corporates across the world to work with innovative and agile startups. The panel will discuss meaningful ways for corporates to associate with startups such as venture capital investors, collaborative pilot projects, merit-based discounts, and much more. For this, I'd request we have a wonderful galaxy of stars on the dais, as I would like to welcome first of all the global head for Zoho for startups at Zoho Corporation. She has been there for the last decade, and it's a big occasion for all of us that we welcome Ms. Kuppu Lakshmi Krishnamurthy. With a big round of applause, thank you ma'am for being part of this discussion. We would also like to welcome the MD India Head of Business Banking at HSBC and Mr. Prakash Jaiswal. Thank you, sir. And Prakash has an eye for Gen Z. He likes to kind of grab the attention and the energies from Gen Z, right? I got it. Thank you very much. And we would also like to welcome the Director and Head of the Startup Ecosystem and Strategic Industry Collaborations at Intel, Mr. Neil Bhatia. बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है आपका. And of course, Neil, a professional with years in industry with proven business leadership in strategy and execution. He mentors several startups and upcoming entrepreneurs and is passionate about healthcare, education, amongst others. Thank you so much. And also we would like to welcome on the dais Head of VC and Startups at Google Cloud. Please welcome Mr. Abhishek Pandey with a big round of applause. Abhishek is the head of VC and startups at Google. He leads the investor partnerships and startup ecosystems engagements for South Asia and India, and is also a part of the India Cloud leadership team. Thank you so much. And I would also like to welcome someone who has more than almost 2 decades plus of experience in India, USA, in international private equity, venture capital and entrepreneurship. He's also the CEO of MeitY Startup Hub, Ministry of Electronics and Information and Technology. Please welcome Mr. Jitendra Vijayvargiya. Thank you so much. And once again, I'd like to request Malhar to be there on the dais to moderate the session.
Another great lineup involving government and the heads of corporate divisions of multinational companies essentially that we have over here. As I said earlier, I think everyone is collaborating with each other, and I want to kind of touch upon those topics and how corporates are essentially supporting startups. My first question to you, Jeet, is that I'm continuously seeing updates of MeitY Startup Hub working with corporates in one way or the other. It's either Google, it's Meta, so many things are happening. Can you shed some more light on what are the collaborations like? How is it benefiting the ecosystem and your learnings from it?
Thank you for having me on this panel. As I briefly alluded earlier, so corporates play a key role in building these startups and scaling them. And I think it's the testimony to the reality of New India that Indian corporates such as Zoho and Jio and Adani and others, and the MNCs like Google, Meta, Microsoft, Intel, etc., are all working with the ministry, either MeitY or other ministries, to support startups. And so the program that we do, for example, like with Google, we do App Scale Academy, whereby we are training app developing startups from tier 2 and tier 3 on the issue of scalability, regulatory frameworks, how to get on an app store. With Meta, we are doing an XR ecosystem development program where the AR, VR, XR startups, getting funded through Meta and support from them. With Jio Market Access Program, because Jio is a big conglomerate in itself, and they're looking to adopt new technologies for acquisition. So we have different programs in different ways. Ultimately, the goal is what does meet the interest of the startup and the corporate. Because as a government, our role is to just connect them and let them co-create value for each other without anyone feeling that, it's not really adding value for them. So I think all these corporates sitting here are doing a wonderful job. Of course, they can do more, but they're doing a good job where they are today. And we'd love to hear more from them.
My next question is to Kuppu. So started in a small apartment in Chennai in 1990s. Zoho now is the dream of every startup founder, right? And recently they have clocked a revenue of $1 billion without raising external capital or going for IPO. So my question to you, Kuppu, is that we want to know the rationale behind having a Zoho for Startups team. What is it that you're looking for, from the ecosystem, and how are you contributing towards it?
So a very good afternoon to one and all here, and I've been looking at the audience and I constantly have this thought on what can I say that really is relatable, and I promise to share information very honestly and very candidly, and I hope there is some point that my team is out there with the booth and you all connect with us. So this is a very good question and I'm going to take a couple of minutes to answer it. So there's a lot of conversation and attention that we have brought after this news of making this 1 billion in revenue. We started the Zoho for Startups program somewhere in 2016 as a concept, also because it was becoming in sync with what Zoho's vision as an organization and what it wants to achieve. So let's connect a few dots here where I joined Zoho in 2010. And when we joined, we were just 1,500 people, and which means we had more access to the CEO. I'm saying this story answering this question in too long, but do listen, because this is very, very relatable to the startups who always want to scale. So when I joined, we were 1,500 people and we had access to CEO, and we got first-hand information on what Zoho wants to do and what its vision and mission is. So there's one constant message that's always been driven, not just in terms of words, but in everyday action from the top leaders I saw was, you have to serve the underserved. Because access to technology, access to knowledge, access to opportunity, we talked a little bit about Tier 1 when GG talked about what MeitY is doing. So this has always been the vision, even when we had not touched the milestone of 85 million users across the world now. But even then in 2010, this was pretty much the vision, which means sustainability and very, very intentional of having to serve the world as startup as a service was always there. So in 2016, when we put together a bundle of apps, 50 plus apps, it has to make sense. So we brought together a bundle called Zoho One. That was a combination of pretty much every app from every segment that you need for your business under one roof. This kind of started making sense where the Invest India team at that time was beginning to form, and we happened to meet accidentally or coincidentally in an event. So conversations began, and this is a very, very efficient team that we're talking about. So it was more of, we have to do this is the obvious next step. So when you look at startups and especially SaaS onboarding, there was not a pattern to it. There's a lot of chaos and the way it has to be. So even startups from edtech or fintech or specific vertical or in a specific stage of growth, whether they were early stage or growing, we could not see any pattern or reason or a structure in which they were onboarding SaaS. So we thought, let's make use of Zoho One as a bundle and start offering this till we have some data, some pattern, some meaning to why we are doing what we are doing, and how, like a startup mindset, we can start doing very significant changes to the program. So it started very simple idea saying, let's put this out there for the startups to take Zoho One and run with it for 1 year, which means you have one door to knock at for a very reliable, trustworthy and affordable software from an organization that's been around for 26 plus years. And so the quadrant of I don't know what I don't know when it comes to onboarding apps has been taken care of. So it sounded very simple, it sounded like the obvious reason, but in the past 5 years, keeping in mind the 2 years of impact of pandemic, it's been a lot of deep learning even for us, Malhar. So right now, like a startup, we have been doing a lot of significant changes where we be very useful to the startups. We have brought flexibility to the program. And I would say we try to serve startups impartially with very, very minimal conditions apply. So we have begun there and a lot of conversations, all the names you have here, including Arthayan and WeWork and everybody here. So corporate social responsibility everyone should have a social responsibility. And Zoho for Startups intends to do with responsibility, not without the support of all of you all. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks a lot for that. And 100% agree that everyone has to come together to kind of make something happen, right? It cannot be done in a silo. And that brings me to my next question to Prakash. And what I've seen, again, I would want to know more on this collaboration front, is that what is the work that HSBC is doing in collaborating with other corporates to kind of help startups? Is there some initiatives that you could shed some more light on?
So first, thank you for inviting me, my team. I would borrow the thinking from Kupu. See, we are a commercial organization, but we are at the end of it, we are a service provider to businesses, right? If you look at an organization like ours, we are there across the world, we serve all kinds of businesses, but when you serve SMEs and startups, right, there has a part of your thinking has to be social and non-commercial in nature, right? We keep discussing this. So I run the SME and the startup business for HSBC in India, and we keep discussing this. When you lend or when you open an account or you take a company international, which is small, early stage, the real satisfaction is actually not commercial. Is that you're facilitating him to do things easier, you're helping him, right? Or her, yeah? So that thinking is at the core of developing propositions for SMEs, startups, early stage, small companies, businesses. So we have been on this journey for startups for the last 3-4 years, and what we have realized is that for a large, legacy organizations like us, we have been around for 150 years, for us to develop new capabilities, which serves that purpose of helping small businesses, collaboration is the key, right? And we have kind of begun on the journey. We call it beyond banking, because that's the word, that's what we are packaging under. We are building collaboration with other service providers, which companies needs in addition to banking. So banking, we are there to provide, but banking is not the only service businesses need in a digital, easy, or a helpful way, right? So we've started doing that. In fact, Kupu is from Zoho. Zoho was the first one we collaborated with because it solved the problem of payments for businesses. That's like the lowest hanging fruit because of the digital stack in the country. And now we have continued the journey collaborating with everyone, many of them, which are core service providers to startups. It can be technology, it can be legal, compliance, HR, supply chain, right? Let's say digital marketing. And we feel that we would add value to startups if they can offer these services, which is bundled with us, which is easier, cheaper, and better quality.
So startups basically get everything under one roof by having partnering with you in a way. Okay, I think that's really relevant for startups, because as a founder, looking out for all these things is a nightmare, and if some things are kind of being brought together, it's a real help to us. And so I would like to ask Neil, who is leading the startup division at Intel, the forebearer of R&D in all spaces, right? So Neil, can you tell us how Intel is kind of running their startup division, their startup program? And I mean, everyone knows that Intel is interested in deep tech startups specifically. Can you shed some more light on that?
Yeah, so I think the thought process and there's a philosophy that goes behind that, right? I think it's very clear that there's no one single company who believes can provide a complete mentorship or an acceleration to any startup. If that company does believe they can do it, then it's being naive or it's just posturing. And that's very much so in the deep tech world, right? So for example, if it's a health tech startup, they need health domain, they need data science domain, and they need the tech domain coming in, right? And if any company comes back and says, hey, you know what, I can do a good mentorship and acceleration of a health tech company, I think that's not fair on the company itself. Also, what we've kind of started realizing is once the corporate starts coming together, multiple of these organizations come together, they grow the ecosystem larger, right? I cannot say that I can grow the ecosystem on my own. I'll do only this much. But when there are 100 companies like me which come together on a single platform, the ecosystem grows multiple bound, right? When it grows multiple bound, the market grows, the leadership for the country grows, and the nation grows. And it's very clear the future. Of any nation is the startups are the growth engines of the nation. Whether you look at the US, whether you look at Israel, whether you look at any other economies of the world, right? Today, even in the US, it's the Silicon Valley that's driving a large sector. In the earlier years, right, it was the automobile and others that were driving it. So once you start focusing around that, then you start saying, okay, can I do a larger good which will help the nation and help me in return, right? That's part one. The part two of this is, like I mentioned, there's no single corporate that can do it. Then you start understanding as to which areas is our expertise, where do we work, who do we collaborate with to kind of really nurture those startups. And I'll give an example, is that if I have to work on a manufacturing startup which is doing robotics, right? I can only provide that tech expertise that gets into the robot. But if the robot has to be one of the best in class worldwide in a warehouse, situation, then I need a warehousing company to start collaborating with me, right? And provide that domain expertise, right? If you start observing the startups, and I'm sure many of folks here would agree, right? Startups have got into a habit of jumping from one corporate accelerator to the other corporate accelerator or third corporate accelerator, collecting badges of honors, right? And I call them badge of honors. Right? And eventually, in that journey, many of them just forget where they started with, they lose their value proposition and go down in the chasm. Right? I think there is a need, and we've tried to attempt doing that, there is a need to get some of the folks together on a single platform. I think something like this is also an awesome one, right? Where we all collectively mentor startups. Even if we can get 10 startups to scale big and not just go fall under the chasm, I think that's important for us, right? We, and one of the things that I would definitely put a plug for is we and with Sign, we started some accelerator in Sign about 5-6 years back. About 2 years back, we said we've reached a peak in running an accelerator there. We need to convert it. If we have to create a needle-moving impact, we need to convert that into an industry-wide initiative. We picked up Industries 4.0 where there was expertise, and we built a complete industry-wide alliance, in that segment, which is an Industry 4.0 alliance called the Plugin Alliance now. And it still operates under Sign. We've excellent partnership there. It's got almost 100 partners now, out of which 30 are corporates and about 50 are startups, and then there are VCs and banks and others who are there. So that's the model where you bring in an entire circular economy. Now, we'll continue doing what we have to do as individual startup accelerators, right? But we have to look at, what can we do along with the nation, right? Because that's what really will build that market, build that ecosystem to become bigger and larger.
On to the next question to Abhishek. Now, we have talked about multiple things in terms of supporting startups, and you are heading the Google division for VCs and startups. So, from a funding point of view, right? So we know that Google goes big when it comes to that. So, can you tell us a bit more about the rationale behind your investments? How do you look at startups from a Google point of view, and what is it that the audience here can take away as a learning and approach Google for collaborations?
So I joined Google about 2 years back, and we have so many interlocks with the startups because we are a multi-product company, we are spread across the globe. It took me 6 months to just understand what all we are already doing with the startups, bringing that under one umbrella, both in India and globally, and then filling in the white spaces. So I'll take a crack at this particular problem statement in a slightly different and nuanced manner. I think there are 3 ways in which we engage, and I'm sure a lot of other corporates, MNCs also sort of engage in this manner. One is the very start, right? I mean, when you are starting out, that's where corporates and ourselves, we come in to pay it forward. The reason being, if we don't do that, who else will, right? So that's where a lot of our initiatives like accelerators, so we run a Google for Startups Accelerator, which we do 2 cohorts every year. We are doing something in partnership with MeitY, which you covered earlier, which is AppScale Academy. We launched our startup school, which touched 10,000 entrepreneurs in the country. The idea was to give them a very interesting capsule of mentorship and information and content in order for them to get started and get sort of bowling and batting at the right wicket. And being a founder myself, these are actual pain points when you're starting out. But that's a paying it forward sort of part of the initiative. Then we do engage very, very deeply with the startups because, and in business parlance, you call them digital natives, right? In the capacity as customers and partners. And that's where the engagement becomes both programmatic and scale in terms of the investments. So for example, with our Google Cloud, we provide every bootstrapped startups as well as post their funding, a package of credit in order to give them a couple of years runway so that they focus on innovation and experimentation in their use case and don't really bother too much about infrastructure costs. And dollars in the initial phases go a long way, right? Even if you are funded. The second part that we bring in, and some of my colleagues are over here, they engage with the startups in terms of the enablement. Even if you are very clear about your use case, you don't know where the tools are and how best to use those tools, right? And globally, innovation is running very, very fast, and you don't need to reinvent all these tools. Why waste your energy? So that's the second part that we try to attack. The third is the go-to-market. If you are a SaaS startup, if you are co-selling to our sort of common sort of buying universe, we have Google Marketplace, we have Google Cloud Marketplace. There are go-to-market motions where we engage very deeply. And these are all bespoke rather than programmatic. And then the last end of the spectrum, which is probably what the question that you asked. So we have a very nuanced way of looking at investments. One is our own CorpDev investments. So we have an India Development Fund. And there we look at investments from two lenses. One is an investing side of lens. If it's a Bharat story, if it sort of resonates with our deep tech mission, or any of the key theses that we run in, from either business perspective or from tech perspective, we go out and see if we can make an investment and see if there is a synergy somewhere down the line. Even if there is none, we do take those sort of punts from an investment perspective, but that's from the CorpDev side of the book. Of course, there are M&A opportunities that we always sort of actively look for. And then there is a completely financial way of looking at it with house in Google, but in Alphabet investment arms. So we have what we call Capital G, which writes growth checks. That's post-Series BC, and that has been increasingly getting active in India, and we sort of champion that as well. Then we have Google Ventures, which is less present in this part of the world, but globally and in North America, they are very much present, and we are trying to sort of see if they want to start looking over here as well. Although we have a lot of VC friends that we cover, and they are doing a fantastic job. So that's all the investment for Capital G. And then we have Gradient Ventures, which looks at very specific AI, ML-based, machine learning-based opportunities or deep tech opportunities, where they go in not only from the perspective of providing capital, but providing mentorship, guidance, and opening up the ecosystem for them. And that's how we look at the investment landscape. So 3 buckets: paying it forward, partnership from a business perspective, and then investing.
I think that's very interesting, because opening up the ecosystem is also very, very critical in terms of giving access to your enterprise customers as well. So Jeet, you have a front row seat to all that is happening in the startup world in terms of corporate innovation and corporate programs. What would your advice be to startups to take maximum benefit of the revolution that is happening?
To piggyback on what Neil was earlier saying, that hopping from accelerator to accelerator or incubator to incubator, it doesn't really help startups. But because then they're stuck in that zone. They are really blinded by what they can get for free from government grants or from the freebies. They're not really focused, because if you really open your eyes, there's a ton of opportunities in terms of the number of incubators, in terms of investors, in terms of corporates out there. Target. Keep running straight, and just know that there's options if you really focus and you search for it. Now, having said that, I have a request in terms of, observation from what corporates also need to do a little bit, right? Because, for example, what at ministry when we try to do a program, we keep three things in mind: scalability, sustainability, and replicability, right? Build a program that's scalable, it's replicable, and it's sustainable. So a programmatic approach. So when we did Google App Scale 1, the idea was that I don't need Google's money. Google will invest where they find their benefit, right? I need their expertise for my Indian startups. How do you get on a Play Store? How do you address the regulatory hurdles? How do you scale to serve 100 million people, right? Scalability issues. So we created a very unique program around it. And we didn't ask Google for money. Google didn't give startups any money. They gave a lot of technical expertise. Program was hugely successful. I think 300-400 crores was funded to the startups through that program, through demo days, etc. And Google also invested in one of them, I think. Very successful program. So we did a second one now. Upskill Academy 2 was recently launched last week, where we are actually taking the Google team on roadshows to Tier 2. We are going to Surat, we are going to Coimbatore, we are going to Indore, we are going to Jaipur, and we are going to Sikkim. All Tier 2. And these are strategically selected areas to provide maximum coverage pan-India. So that's how we are doing it. Same thing we did with Meta. We selected 4 incubators from 4 parts of the country. We took one from Northeast, we took one from South, one from North, one from heart of India, so that we can give maximum coverage. Now, having said that, Intel has been working 10 odd plus years with startups, through DST, etc. So these guys have been doing fabulous work anyway. I really want to get onto the banking corporates. Be it Yes Bank, HSBC, SDFC, Standard Chartered, DBS, etc. Everybody comes to us. Everybody wants to work with startups, but unfortunately for most, still, they see it as customer, not co-creator. And I'm not saying HSBC does that. I'm just saying from my little knowledge when I'm developing a program. Now, SBI came to us as well, and this is where I love it, when SBI comes. Because when they open their SBI startup branch, right? Now, SBI, when it enters a game, it's a 600-pound gorilla entering a game. And then we start working with SBI to figure out how do we develop new startup-related products. Because just opening a branch, calling it startup branch, but still selling debt collateral-based funding is not going to work. And so that's the first discussion I had when they came. And now we are working on product profiling as to what kind of product that they can create, because we need policy intervention at that level through RBI, etc. Then banks will be very happy to figure a way out because their hands are tied through regulatory framework. But when SBI enters the game, then we can actually talk about how do you alter the framework. Having said that, still in your private capacity, what we look for for startups is data sets. We want to create sandbox environment where data can be provided to startups to train their algos, to serve their customers and build their product. Zero cost banking, all these solutions are great, but data is the key we need. We need the expertise. Intel gives expertise, Google is giving, Meta, etc. Everyone is giving, and banks are also providing that support. I'm not saying they're not. I just want more scalable program approach, something that our startups can get aside from money. Money will come if their product is good, but they need to co-create product through expert mentoring from the corporates and through access to some of the resources that they have. But anyway, I'll put my request here only at that. So thank you.
Right. So I think Prakash is the natural next. So do tell us, how are you kind of planning to enter into the new year?
See, so what you said clearly resonates with us, but I would also agree that we are not there, right? And you rightly said, see, if you think at banking, what is the biggest problem in banking today? That when you're serving the customer, there is a huge amount of internal processes banking has, right?
Because it's regulated, it's legacy, whatever, right? Multi-geography for us, for example, we have multiple regulators. So the biggest problem in banking to solve is friction, right? In fact, like in our bank, for the last 5 years, we have been putting like billions of dollars to transform the bank. I think most of the dollars have been spent to reduce friction. Because if you reduce friction in your internal system, the customer experience will be better. And the next step is what Jeet was saying, we will use the huge amount of data we have. Just look at HSBC, we have a 10% market share in global trade. No other bank globally has it, which means we have so much of data, but we don't know what to do with data. So the next step is, how can you use your data to co-create products? And that wasn't possible earlier because all these data was in legacy systems or on scanned electronic form, which is not the case now. Like for HSBC, 89% of the trade finance which I spoke about, where we have 10% global market share, is digital, right? So I think Jeet clearly resonated with what you're saying. My sense is bank will come to the game. I think they're getting ready. They just prioritized using technology to reduce friction. And now technology will be used to co-create new products using the data we have. Data anyway we have the most in the country, maybe other than after Google possibly. So that's my take on it.
Next question to Kopu. So apart from the fantastic product suite that is Zoho One, I think when I was in touch with one of your teammates, there was a mention of opening up doors for your enterprise customers to kind of engage with startups as well. Is that something you're
I'm not sure if that was what was conveyed, but eventually that's what we are thinking, because we want to bring together a marketplace, not just for, there should be a scope within our world of Zoho to create such spaces. So I'm not sure, because that's not what was in my roadmap or what we have for startups. I've been listening to all of what the conversation is. Just a couple of observations, and I hope this resonates with the audience. For Zoho, it's very, very important for people who are approaching Zoho, or even for Zoho for Startups program, to understand the big picture, which is very, very difficult. I do understand just by bits and fragments of news. You don't really understand what goes on inside. But I really liked what Prakash said. It is very, very candid. Did you all hear him say how much money goes into the effort of reducing friction? Now, this kind of conversation, to get a full context, you have to be an insider. I was talking to Jeet about that. So it is wrong, first of all, to compare how Google is doing so much for startups, Meta is doing so much for startups with the government. Now, you look at Zoho's story, we are bootstrapped, and we are always going to be. So there is, most of the time, a singular decision from a singular person that's going to come down the hierarchy, and we all are doing our best to align, where we look at the pulse from each of the audience, situations like this, and take back notes to the organization. So right now, both Zoho and Zoho for Startups program is like in an early stage startup. And we are very, very intentional. My only job is to take care of the startups program and make it useful, take it to the next level. But at this point, we do have a lot of startups approaching me with pitch decks, but that's not the angle we are looking at as a primary way to serve the startups. Right now is to give them quality SaaS. Right now is to reduce friction in this process, where how do I go about? And I want to tell the entrepreneurs here to kind of work on your emotional quotient as well, what we call emotional intelligence. Because when you're looking at a scale of organization like Google or Meta or Zoho, it's very, very important for your entrepreneurial mind to understand when you're seeking a person with a certain question. Unfortunately, you're not the only person we have to answer. And this is something important for an entrepreneur, because you're going to serve hundreds of customers in a day. So a couple of points is very, very important, where do the homework, ask specific questions, and like a couple of us said, information is already out there in order to save your time. So you don't have to come with us with specific questions for answers that are already there. And then with regard to Zoho for Startups program, right now we have begun with a very flexible way to offer early stage startups to come on board Zoho, because many a times, when a wish is granted, we're not ready for the wish. We have a lot of upskilling to do. And someone not exactly from a startup world, I'm able to see it with an impartial perspective, to be very honest with how SaaS investment of time and effort by the founding team is very, very important. You cannot have a CTO come on board, wait till there is jugaad after jugaad, create a mess, and then look in hindsight to solve some of your problems. This conversation alone is keeping us busy forever. And we have been taking the Zoho for Startups program to everywhere Zoho has been opening offices. because we also see that some of the startups who have businesses here now have other places thanks to the various bridge programs the government also is bringing into place. So it's very, very important to understand it in a holistic way. And I'm personally also here to encourage every woman entrepreneur out there to ask all of your silly questions, to not worry about what people judge. To show up here itself is a big thing, and I'm here today to represent each of you in this space because I'm a microbiologist turned SaaS evangelist. And if someone like me can understand, ask silly questions, understand APIs to integrations, and work with startups, you definitely can. So to every single woman out here who still has a lot of questions, we are all here especially listening to you all. And to every other entrepreneur, technology is one side, but the social responsibility is on each of you. To not worry about asking the right question, to not really worry if you're chasing the right problem. There is no such thing called right or wrong. Many lessons we learn in the hindsight. So use technology as a means to achieve the dream, and put your hands up and ask for help, however big or small it is. And today this panel stands as a promise to you all to say, however we look as competitors, that sometimes we all come together to serve the Indian startup ecosystem in the best way that we can. That's why we all are here. I'm talking on behalf of everyone, and thank you so much for asking the right question.
This definitely needed to be said. A big round of applause for. So my next question is to all of you, right? And I want to give something to the audience which they can take away as a key learning and something as an inside knowledge as well. Would love for everyone to share what is planned for your organizations in the coming year. Before everyone breaks for holidays, for Christmas holidays, we would want to know from the horse's mouth itself that what is it that you guys have planned, what can we be prepared for, and what should we be looking forward to?
Okay, so in 2023, we're coming up with a lot of new collaborations. Some of the collaborators are sitting right here with me. And we promise to be very, very intentional in bringing knowledge sessions and workshops where all you have to do is show up, be very, very intentional in why you're doing what you're doing. So the minute you seek requests, we'll make sure to put together and bring to you the service that you need in Zoho's capacity. So that's a promise we have for 2023. And my team and I have already begun planning, including some of the people that are working here. So look forward to that news, because most of us forget after asking questions. Sometimes answers are even in the form of a film poster that you see when you're parking your car. So keep looking for information, and as founders, you should always have time for that. So that's all I have to say, and I look forward to knowing many more startups in 2023, and that's all I have now.
Thank you. Prakash, 2023, how is it looking for you?
Yeah, so we will do a lot more than we have done in the last, so it's a very young journey for us, but it's moving in the right direction. It's very exciting. It's commercially also very exciting for the bank, because the underlying companies we bank and help are growing faster. Right? HUL grows at 7%, your banking can grow at 10%. When startups grow 3x, you can grow 3x as well. So it's very exciting for us. We will keep doing more of what has worked for us, and we will try new things. I heard in the earlier panel Sajid saying revenue financing. I'm already working on it. So you will see us coming. So we do have a $250 million, and Jeet, we do this well, better than maybe SBI. We have a $250 million startup financing fund. And very happy to share, we have already underwritten $220 million in this country. But as you always do, you focus on the biggies and where risk is lesser. But now we want to go down. We have a demarcated fund for Series A. I want to go down to seed. I want to go down to angel, because I'm connecting to the point I said I'll be happy if I could accelerate the journey, growth, and whatever you say, of early stage guys. That's real India, that's real Bharat, and then we are on the journey. So that's in store, a lot more. Yeah,
looking forward to it, and it's exciting. Neil, your thoughts?
So I think that's a very great question at a time when we are about to wind down the year.
Wind down, yeah.
Busy trying to finish up what we were thinking we would do in the year 2022. But I think it's very apparent that look, if the ecosystem has to grow and we have to grow with the ecosystem, I truly believe in this, right? That the corporate for India and India for corporate, right? I mean, that's the only way we all can grow. And I think we are at a time in the nation where the nation really is looking at how corporates can scale and help the rest of the next gen to come up here. So for us, there are 2 or 3 focus areas that we are looking at. One is how do we work with the rest of the ecosystem, rest of the corporates to address some of the nagging issues where startups are beginning to see. And I'll give you an example is a lot of startups that are there in a lot of sectors, right, which are actually, they'll do very well outside of India. Right? India for India, India for global. Again, if that mantra almost everybody's heard, right? Now, for them to go out, half of them are naive. Many of them need shared services like I want to hire some of the best talent outside, right? They don't have any talent agency that can help them outside, or they need to hire the next CTO, right? So things like those that are very, very basic, but things that are plaguing the startup ecosystem to find the right kind of leadership talent as they grow, right? So some of these areas is where, one, we want to focus on. 2 is, I really want to go back to what Jeet said. I think the data set issue. If India has to be an AI-centric country, and I truly believe, right, I mean, this is the time where India can excel from a product, a SaaS, a service standpoint, is leveraging AI, because that's core to our DNA, that software is core to our DNA. We need quality data sets coming out of the country. We need, enterprises to shed inhibitions that data is their territory, open it up, let innovation thrive. And I think that's the other area that we're going to go focus on. How do we make sure that data can be shared for the right purposes, right? And obviously the third part is there are certain vertical areas which I won't be privy to disclose, but those are areas that we will go really drive after in this country. So, yep. And I really want to wish you guys all the best for the coming year. It is going to be a great ride in the coming year. I think we'll see all colors of it.
Thank you, Neil, for that. Abhishek,
I mean, for us, it's like we are building, for us, startup initiatives in particular, right? I mean, it's like we are building the airplane as we are flying. So it's very hard for me to pinpoint one specific area, but some things that I'm very excited about. So first of all, Google is very relevant when a founder has started up and all the way through his journey of a scale up, his or her journey of a scale up, right? So when you build, you work with Google Cloud. You of course deal with Play Store. Very quickly you have to integrate with Maps if you are looking at geo coordinates. You might also be leveraging GPay for some of the promotions. And then you will be doing search, ads, YouTube, etc. for marketing and scale up. One of the key initiatives that we are driving is to bring one Google for at a scale, not only for bespoke for large customers, but to mainly democratize that access for a lot of startups for the entire ecosystem. And that is an initiative that we are working very hard on. We are investing, and this is something that we are leading from India. So we are hiring, we are investing a lot in the startup ecosystem. For the ecosystem partner of you, I mean the ANIs and the accelerators, incubators, and VCs, we are also increasing our partnerships team size. So please look out for our reach outs, or please reach out to us to see how we can serve your portfolio better. But that one Google initiative is something that we are very excited about. Yes, we will continue to invest behind the winners like AppScale Academy, the Startup School, and stuff like that. Our GFS accelerator cohorts are getting more and more sharpened. So we experimented with a woman founder cohort, which was taken up very, very well. So we'll probably be repeating that. We are going deeper onto the tech side now, deep tech. So there would be some cohorts on deep tech. But it is the one Google which you should definitely look out for, and I'm very excited with it.
That's nice to know. One Google is the thing to look out for. So moving to Jeet, everybody is very excited. Great, exciting things are coming from MSH side. Please do share what's something that we can look forward to in 2023.
So it's our Honorable Prime Minister's vision, right? we need to keep growing and keep going up and fast and farther. So in terms of specificity, let's talk about funding. So of course, we'll be launching our Samrid second cohort, where we are doing accelerator-based funding of up to 50 lakh rupees to a startup. That's going to be out there. Second big thing is we're launching, or we are in consultation phase of a 450 crore seed fund scheme focused on tier 2, tier 3. It has some 100 crore is earmarked for pilot funding. So when a startup has, some validated their product but need to pilot it out, they don't have money, so 100 CR is marked for that. 350 is for investment. Over there, we're going to get matching funding, so it's going to become 700 crore funding scheme. Third thing is that should, if it happens, should happen by February or March itself. So that should be early in the year. And then later we'll come up with more funding programs as per the needs, because we need to build up more accelerator funding programs and thematic, and maybe look at deep tech. Aside from funding program, we'll be looking at our international programs. Aside from US, UK, etc., that we have, we'll be launching with few other countries, as I mentioned, Middle East, etc., taking them there. Third is event-wise, to build a narrative in India and support more startups. So we'll have the National Startup Day event, which is January 16th is the National Startup Day. So around that, we'll be doing some events as well. And then G20, Digital Innovation Alliance Summit, or where we'll be bringing 170 odd startups from around the world, the best of the best, to India. That's going to be happening. Fourth thing is we already have 50 plus corporate partners who are providing support to startups, either CSR, freebies, etc., etc. One program I definitely will look to launch next year is SaaS Startup Scalator Program, powered by Zoho. That should happen next year. And so that's the target I have, that next year you wouldn't be saying this. And we will make sure we actually launch that program, because Sridhar Vembu is the icon for what Indian entrepreneur is, an Indian success story is, for how he built Zoho. He's an inspiration. He works with the ministry in a lot of ways. And if India is going to be $1 trillion digital economy, we have to build more SaaS-based product companies and scale them up. And I think Zoho is going to play a critical, integral part of that growth story. So definitely going to make sure that program happens next year. Thank you.
Great. So I think as a conclusion to, all the discussions that we have had, that this is the best time to start up. Everyone who is starting out, there are exciting things lined up for you from various angles, from a government support point of view as well. Corporates are supporting you. There are incubators from tier 2 and tier 3 cities who are doing fantastic work. I've had the pleasure of personally working with a few. So, Durga Prasad ji from AIC, Nalanda, Shivakiran sir from AICSQ. I've seen these guys, really put in a lot of effort and, bring out multiple collaborations for startups as well. So, all in all, it's a great time to start up, and I would like to thank all the panelists over here to come and, support this initiative. And thanks again once, and big round of applause for all the panelists.